Okay, hey everyone, welcome to our Team One for Freedom call. And Hans and I are so excited to welcome you. It is April 3rd, can you believe that already? 2019. And we are so grateful that you've carved out the time to join us tonight with Patrick, Kelly, and Hans, my husband, Dr. Hans Finzel, to share about their new book, MillennialBOOM. And but before we do that, I wanted to welcome our new team members. And I see that we have Keisha and Alana. And I was hoping your sponsor could introduce you guys. But and I see Alana, there's two of you there. So could you guys just introduce yourselves, please? We'd love to meet you.
Okay, yes. So we met Wilda through our church in Cardio Refit, and she's been amazing in inviting us to a lot of Juice Plus events so that we can learn more about the product. I'm actually in the military, so I'm very concerned with what I put in my body. I have to definitely have annual PT tests. So, just the more you get older, the more you're concerned about what you put in your body. And so I love the fact that I'll have the opportunity to go to Sacramento so I can learn more about the product and potentially even educate more people about its great benefits.
Wow, fantastic. Yay. Well, welcome. We're so grateful to have you on. And tell us who that is with you, because we...
Hi, I'm Keisha. I'm her sister.
Oh, Keisha.
I'm under Wilda as well,
Okay.
possibly. And I've just met her through our refit class, and I've been taking the product for maybe a year, and I just love the effects that it has on my body. So I'm just really interested in learning more about the product, and I'm looking forward to being in Sacramento.
Okay, yay. All right. I see you're both in the same room now. So
Yes.
I got the memo here with the screen, having to scroll through here. So anyway, well, welcome. And I'm so thrilled you're both coming to Sacramento. That's fantastic. So, and hey, welcome to everyone else. And I'm going to go ahead and then just pass the baton to Hans and Patrick. And we've got more time, to hear from you guys on MillennialBOOM. So welcome.
Well, hey, everybody. Great to have you on the call. And also those of you who will be listening to the recording later. Patrick and I met by chance, most unlikely of friendships on an airplane going to China, I think 6 years ago. And the long and short of it is this book was born as a result of our friendship. So we want to talk tonight about how what we have learned relates to the Juice Plus business specifically. It relates to any place you work generally, because I know a lot of you talked about military or wherever you happen to work. If you're not doing Juice Plus full time, this is a topic that is just permeating the country. So we're just going to kind of run through kind of why we wrote the book, what it's about, just give you a little taste of it. All of you who are coming to Sacramento will be getting a free copy of the book, autographed by Patrick and I. We're excited to give you a paperback copy, and that'll be cool. So just as a general survey, there are 5 generations working side by side right now in the workforce in America and in the Juice Plus world. And you can see on this chart here, the builders, the boomers, the Gen X, the millennials, and the iGens or Gen Z. One thing is funny about the youngest generation, it keeps changing its name for about a decade until it finally gets locked in. I've seen so many different handles for what they call the born after the year 2000, but we're going to focus on just boomers and millennials, and we'll tell you why in just a moment. But I just put together a little thing here to show you who these people are. The builders are Armstrong and Buffett. These names you're all going to know, probably without even hearing their first name. Boomers would be Hanks and Oprah. Gen X, Lopez and Fallon. Millennials, Zuckerberg and Lawrence, as in the Jennifer. And you might not know the last two, Ty in Ireland. That's Ty Kelly. That's Patrick's son, and Ireland Finzel, which is our granddaughter. So those are the 5 generations. If you look at the bottom of this slide, each generation brings its own view of the world, which creates both opportunities and threats to businesses. So that's kind of what we have learned. All generations have a choice. They can condemn or they can collaborate. Reject. And I think I'm going to toss it over to Patrick now, because the conversation with him began because of the lack of respect that he was experiencing in the world in which he works. So Patrick, why don't you take it away? And I hope he's there.
Hello, hello. Oh, there we are. It was muted. Hey, everyone. Great to see everyone. Yeah, so it was interesting to me because, you know, when I met Hans, it was one of the first authors and doctors that I've met, and on an airplane. So it was even a little more fun. So as I recall, I was talking to Hans about, we call it the boomer buzzsaw, is that a lot of the boomers ran the businesses in the world that I worked, which is the fresh produce and supply chain industry. And as I was encountering more and more boomer bosses or boomer owners throughout my start of my career, I just remember having multiple conversations with Hans and asking him how he related in his line of work. And, you know, I had all these ideas, everything to contribute, but all my ideas just sucked. It wasn't enough. It was, yeah, you'll get there, kid. You know, keep working. You know, put in those long, hard hours. You know, and then, like we said, it came to a point is we either collaborate or we reject or respect. And so Hans and I, like I said, had more conversations about millennials and what we could actually do to make things better. And the conversations got deeper and a friendship started to grow. And then we really wanted to see what kind of difference that we can make, and started to understand, why is this message so urgent, right? Why? Well, we'll tell you why. I mean, there's over 82 million millennials in the workforce today, and there's still over 76 million boomers, the 2 largest working generations today. I mean, it's insane. And we can't work together. We can't respect each other. We can't work together. Come on. Yeah, we can. Hans and I have proved that. Every one of us on this call has probably proved that already. But now it's, how do we get the world to look at that in that view and say, let's do it together? You know, there's many people suffering, productivity, lack of culture in the workplace. I mean, all across America, great people in offices and in life are not getting along. Well, that's what we're here to do. That's what we're trying to bridge that gap, to bring the unity and the behavior together. And there's nothing holding back anymore. And that's what we're here to help do. Wouldn't you say, Hans?
Yeah, I would. And I'm just looking at this group of people on our screen, and we have a lot of generations represented here. Probably 4 of the 5 generations are represented on this screen. A millennial was born in the last 2 decades of the last century. And we decided to focus on millennials and boomers because, like Patrick said, they're the 2 biggest generations. Not to say if you're a Gen X, you're not important. And some Gen Xers feel like they're the skipped generation, like they're in the crack because they're not as big of a generation, but they're just as important. But another thing that I just was thinking about today, Gen Xers are kind of a blend of boomers and millennials. They're sort of in the middle a little bit, but there's a pronounced value difference between boomers and millennials. And how does this affect our Juice Plus business? Well, if you want to grow your team, you're going to get people on your team that are not of your generation. And sometimes you're not even going to realize how you might be turning off your new team members by your generational view of how we do work, how we talk on the phone, how we do live, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we have kind of identified 5 areas of a particular conflict. and see if you can relate to any of these. I'm going to share my screen again and just show you the list of the 5 areas of conflict. Okay, so we have, I love this picture. This is Patrick's experience with baby boomers. I love it. Okay. 5 areas where we see conflict. Number 1, the workplace and workspace. How we view where we work and what we do at that place. Number 2, schedules and priorities. I can't tell you how many baby boomers I've heard say, oh, those millennials, they just never show up on time. They always want to have time off. It seems like work is their last priority, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to show up at 8 o'clock, et cetera, et cetera. Number 3, dress codes and body art. And I said body art because it's not only tattoos, but it's also like facial hair for men. That's also a big deal nowadays. Marriage and children and technology. Those 5 arenas of conflict we unpack in the book. And that's just kind of the place we see the greatest tension. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to, we don't have a lot of time tonight, and we wanted to be sure and have a little time for your questions. So we're kind of going now fast forward to some of our conclusions. And boomers have a lot of criticisms of millennials. I've already mentioned a couple of them, and millennials have a ton of criticisms against us boomers. So Patrick, what are some of your takeaways after our 6-year journey of trying to figure out how to, instead of rejecting each other, learning to respect each other and work well together?
You know, one of the things that I've learned through this journey is that, you know, we both just don't get it. You know, I think it's a learning process. And one of the things I told you today, Hans, was it's like a marriage, right? It's you're going to build with time, and then you got to compromise, a lot of compromise between all generations, and listening and learning together. I mean, if you don't know about the generation, then you got to learn about them. You can't just say I know it all, and when you're just meeting somebody. That's my first right there. I would say for my second, boomers are not workaholics. Like in my industry, I mean, I can tell you, you guys know it. Every time I call Hans, he's on a beach in Mexico. Donna's on Facebook having a great time. I mean, come on. I mean, these are not workaholics. These are people that are working and enjoying their life. And that I've started to understand and realize that is that not all boomers are workaholics. Just like Hans will tell you in a second, not all millennials don't want to go to work or show up. I mean, work is not somewhere you go, it's something you do. For another thing I think I've started to understand as well is that boomers draw a line between being at work and being at home. That's starting to become a more drawn line as they're having grandchildren as well, and that line is becoming more fuzzy of where they are at work. When they draw that line between marriage and family, as we talked, that's one of the conflicts that we have. And then I would say one of the last takeaways would be the technology gap. I live in California now, which, you know, everybody thinks California, Hollywood, and beaches and technology. I mean, I still live in a place that's very far behind the times. And I would say the technology gap, I think, depends on where you live. I mean, I always thought that boomers don't respond to text messages or they don't read their emails. And what I started realizing that that's all about company culture as well. That's about who their leaders are and how they perceive them to understand and adapt to technology as well. And I started learning with Hans and I, it started off as phone calls. I remember early out, it was phone call after phone call. And then we started realizing that, you know, text messages and emails go a lot, you know, more value with us than just having a phone call and talking. We were able to get more done through the use of technology than just having an old school conversation. And really our phone calls, as Hans knows, are more follow-up and are almost 3 to 5 minute phone calls than long 30, 45-minute phone call of building and talking about something. So those are my 4 that I've learned over this course of the last 6 years.
Patrick, we got some time here. I just want to ask you a little bit more about, there's on this call, it looks like there's 4 of us that are in the baby boom generation, maybe 5 of us, but what are some of the things that really, yeah, I'm pointing, I see you, 1, 2, Marianne, Grace, Shelley. I think Nancy and Bob, I'm sorry, they're builders, I believe. I think they were born.
No, Hans, Shelley is not a boomer. She's younger.
Okay, I'm going to get in trouble now.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. So just don't even go there. But anyway, go ahead.
All right. Anyway, what were a couple of things that really annoyed you about? Because when I met Patrick, he was ticked off at the entire baby boom generation, and he said, I don't want to work with these people. They're a bunch of jerks. I can't wait till they're dead and gone. So what were a couple of those things that really frustrated you in particular?
Well, it was just, I mean, you got to remember, I mean, I started my first company in my early 20s. And so what really frustrated me was the lack of respect. I mean, I was a business owner with just as much money as they had in their pocket, and they got no respect. The business I did, I had no respect, and it was just, I was a kid, you know, and that was one of the most frustrating things I could tell you, is that it didn't matter what I had, didn't matter how I compared to them. It was, you're still a kid. You're younger than me. You're a kid, and you'll learn one sooner or later. It's just frustrating, and I was out there hustling and doing the same things these guys were doing.
So there's a huge takeaway. Sometimes we boomers can just send off a message that we don't respect the younger generation because they haven't paid their dues, jumped through the hoops, matured enough, blah, blah, blah. They don't, they got tattoos or whatever. But here's a couple of my takeaways. Not all millennials are equal. And not all of any generation is equal. I have millennial tendencies, and some of you boomers on the call tonight we have millennial tendencies. And then I look at our 4 millennial children that Donna and I have raised, and they have boomer tendencies, so not all millennials are equal. Secondly, I learned that millennials have very fluid work habits, and there's not this big one of the greatest things I've learned from Patrick is he doesn't like the idea of I'm going to go to work. And his grandmother is always asking him, Patrick, are you at work? The millennials just have a fluid line between life and work and family, and they like to work wherever they are, telecommuting, and we have to remember that in our Juice Plus business, that we all know we do our business in tiny little chunks between work, right? A lot of us have day jobs, and we have to do our Juice Plus work at lunch or in the evening or on weekends. And that's a very millennial practice. One of the things that blew me away is Patrick said that millennials think all of us boomers are workaholics. And he mentioned that. And I've never considered myself a workaholic. However, most boomers did become workaholics. When we were in the 1960s, if any of you remember the 1960s, we were the hippie generation. We were the dropouts. We were the drug-crazed flakes. But then we became workaholics. We became the most materialistic generation of any generation. And we became workaholics. And then our families broke up. Half the boomer marriages have broken in divorce. Patrick's parents are divorced. And so I can see now his perspective is you guys put work above family. You put work above the children, and we're not going to do that. So that's been a great thing for me to understand, not to criticize the work habits and the work flow. And maybe they're not going to be rigid like we are, but that doesn't matter, because ultimately, is the work getting done? Two other things. The power distance and attention spans keep shrinking due to technology. Sometimes a millennial will get in your face and you'll think, wow, that was a disrespectful thing to say. Well, it's not really. It's just that the power distance between generation keeps shrinking in the sense it's not they don't respect us. It's just like they're, especially because of the instantness of technology, we're just in each other's face all the time. And so we shouldn't take those things personally if they criticize us. It's not personal. Finally, the last thing I wanted to say in my insight is time to let them do it their way. When I was in my job at World Venture, one of the last things I did before I left that CEO job is I really championed millennials, because I realized every generation comes and every generation goes, and it's time for us to to really champion the young people and to bring them onto our teams and to let them do it their way and do what I call reverse mentoring, where, I've learned a lot from Patrick. I love it. I'm not his mentor. We're each other's mentors. And I think that's a great model for all of us between the generations. So that's just a quick flyby. We got a couple minutes, Donna, I think, for Q&A.
Great. Thank you both so much. This is fabulous. And just a couple thoughts, Hans, on how you feel like our Juice a little bit more. You said something, but about how you feel our Juice Plus business, works for both generations.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think the Juice Plus business is the perfect business for millennials because you can do it anywhere. We have our virtual office. We don't go to an office, and millennials hate going to an office. They don't want to have a boss if they can avoid it. And how many times do we brag about how wonderful the Juice Plus business is because you don't have a boss and you don't have hours and you don't have a chain of command and you're not stuck as a cog at the bottom of an organizational chart. Everything about how the Juice Plus business is designed, in my opinion, is millennial. It's perfect. And I just was thinking about Jay Martin today, our leader, who's definitely a builder. He's part of the greatest generation. But Donna and I were talking about the fact that Jay Martin has been championing not just boomers, but actually he's put a lot of Gen Xers into leadership now in the company, including, I'm pretty sure Paolo, Janet Black are both Gen Xers. And see, so here's a guy who's old, Jay Martin's definitely old, but he's got a vision to bring in the young. And I do think it's a perfect business for millennials.
Love it. Thank you so much. So does anyone have a question you'd like to ask these two guys? Thank you both. Patrick, really grateful you're on with us tonight. We got quite a few millennials. You are all ladies on here that are millennials.
Yeah, let's hear from Marianne. What have you got there?
I have a question for Patrick. Patrick, are you familiar with Voxer?
Yes. Yeah, okay. I am.
Okay, I have a few millennials on my team, and they're not really grasping the use of Voxer. And they understand how to use it. They just don't pay attention to it. Do you have any suggestions? How did you start to use Voxer? And what made you realize it was a good thing? Or maybe you don't. I don't know.
See, I don't use Voxer anymore. I used to when I started with Hans, and I did it for a while. And then, like I said, I think more of it, again, it depends on your social media aspect of it too. I mean, I've got probably 40 apps on my phone that I have, but I just finally turned the notifications off and I check them as needed.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. If the app isn't enticing to me, and I hate to say it, the Voxer app is not that enticing. I'm sorry to say it like that. I use other ways of Messenger. I mean, a lot I'm using now is I use a lot of Snapchat and a lot of Instagram as my messaging now. So I think it just depends on the platform and who holds the platform and how well it works.
So you would use Messenger within Facebook, that Messenger? That's the one?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I use more Snapchat, Messenger, and Instagram as mine. But again, that's just mine that I use. If Hans was to tell me, hey, get back on Voxer because this is what's, I probably would. You know what I mean? I have it. I just turn off the notifications. I probably have tons of notifications in Voxer that I have not checked.
Oh yeah, it drives you crazy if you leave the notification.
You're right.
Yeah.
If I send Patrick a Voxer, I have to send him a text and tell him I left him a Voxer.
Yeah, he does. But if he was going to Snapchat me or message me on Facebook or text, I mean, I respond instantly, I would say, right, Hans? Instantly.
Oh, yeah.
So can I ask real quick, because I know Cambria and Max use Marco Polo, and I think Kara does also. But Anita, before you guys answer that, Anita was going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, honestly, I feel like I kind of run into the same problem with Voxer. Not that it's not enticing per se, but a lot of times millennials, we have so much going on our phones that, I mean, if the conversation isn't really directed at me, I'm just like, I'll look at it later. And then the next thing you know, you have 500 notifications on Voxer. Who has time to go back and read all of those messages? So I can definitely relate with that, where it can be a little bit overwhelming because you have so many people talking at the same time, and it's easier to respond if somebody just directs a message at you, because then, you know, it's a little bit more personalized and a little bit more, I guess, relevant to you, or, you know, it makes it a little bit more urgent since it's specifically to you. It's not just trying to follow a giant group text message.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good.
Can I ask too then, so what would your, so that, I think therein we need to find, you know, something where we can work as a team. I think that's why Voxer is helpful, as you can get everything out to a team and you don't have to do it one-to-one. Patrick, what would your suggestion be on how we communicate team-wide rather than just one? Because obviously, if you have a bigger team, you have to use your time wisely.
Yeah.
No, of course. I mean, right now, I mean, it's just like with anything else. I mean, with my kids' sports right now, I'm coaching, and I've got 10 parents, and I've got 14 different kids, and it's funny because every parent wants to text me direct. They don't want to be involved in the group text at all. And it's that personal touch. Again, and what I always do is, even with our text message, I always will respond to someone individually. But I will also say, hey, I appreciate you reaching out direct, but I need you to keep in line with our group text message so the team knows what's going on. The last thing I want to do is have to repeat myself to 14 different parents. And I say that at the end of every single time a parent reaches out to me direct. Like I have to, because I know that, like we just said, and I mean, Anita, it's like we're going to have 500 text messages from 14 different parents. That's just on soccer. So that doesn't even include my Juice Plus, my actual business, my job. I mean, you know what I mean? And that's, so I always recommend is, reaffirming to them where the platform is, and then reassuring them in that platform that they can direct message you in there, and also, but you need them in there for these reasons as well. That would be my suggestion.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing, just for my perspective as your national marketing director, everyone, and that is, I have a high tolerance, as Hans knows, for a lot of stuff. Like my email, all these things are full, and I don't care. I just ignore it, and I do what matters to me. So you can go into any Voxer chat and go on the gear at the top and tap it, and then tap mark all heard. So if you're that kind of person that it drives you crazy to have that number, because I think one of the NFT chats I'm in right now is about 1,500 messages, but I don't care. It doesn't bother me. But I know all of you checklist people, it drives you nuts. Like Jane's like that. You know, she had to have Voxer emptied every day, you know, and I could care less, you know. So you just make it serve you is what I would say, because this is the tool our company's using. And you can forward Voxer messages, you know, that can be shared outside of Voxer also. So there's a lot of good in it. And then as your leaders on your individual teams, you know, so in your case, Grace, you know, you and your leaders may decide to forward some of your favorite ones into a smaller team chat, you know. so that some of your millennials don't feel that pressure of how am I going to listen to all this stuff, you know?
Oh, honey, even with all of us boomers and all the other things, we still have to say VU. So
what's that?
I boxered you.
Boxered you.
Yeah, that's our call. And so Patrick, I think we end up texting anyway.
Yeah, we do. We do.
And Patrick, can you just address like how do you receive people? What kind of interchanges do you like more, as opposed? I don't even know how to ask that question. But you know, what would make you want to be a part of someone like Hans? What drew you to him?
I always say anything that has good content. Hans has great content, right? But that's it. I would say a lot of times, and Hans and I go through this too. Even when Hans and I text each other, I mean, I hate to say it, right? I mean, I can text Hans a picture, and Hans not respond for 3 days on that one picture. I think it's just the content and where we are, right, and what we're doing, and like Donna said, how the task oriented people who are making the checklist versus the what feels right, Donna, right? What am I going to do and what am I going to accomplish today? There's so many different, right, ways of doing things. So you're going to have to tailor it to those certain people. One thing I was going to say is, as you tailor your groups, if you've got a 10-person group and you know that you got 4 task oriented, they're going to make checklists every day. You got, 3 Donnas, that are just going to go off what their ambition is. And when they wake up, they're going to say, I'm going to do my calls this, and this day. You might want to start subgrouping these into smaller groups and figuring out which ones use which platform better. I mean, I can tell you with one of my guys that I sold Juice Plus to, he only Snapchatted, and he was the only Snapchat guy that I had, but he would just Snapchat. So you just had to customize it. And that's one thing that I'm learning even within my new consulting business, is I'm having to customize more projects for people, not just millennials, but Xers and boomers as well. So which interface you decide to use, yes, Voxer is the tool you're going to use, but just remember you're going to have to customize it a little bit to get them to draw in, and you have to create that value to tell them why you use that, why you share on that platform, why we do this as a team.
That's great.
Super helpful. Thank you. Well, I can see we could talk longer, everyone, but we really are very careful to keep these calls to a half hour. We've gone over a little because it's such an awesome topic. And we're thrilled that most of you, if not all of you, we will see, except Bob, we'll miss you, and Brianna. But Patrick will be there, and we're so happy to have met Keisha and Alana, and look forward to lots of
There she is!
Yay! So we're thrilled, and so thanks everyone. And thank you most of all, Hans and Patrick. Let's give them a hand. That was awesome, and really appreciate it. And we will see you guys.